A reading from 1 Samuel chapter 29. The Philistines brought all their troops together at Aphek, while the Israelites camped at the spring in Jezreel Valley. The 5 Philistine kings marched out with their units of 100 and of 1,000 men. David and his men marched in the rear with King Achish. The Philistine commanders saw them and asked, "What are these Hebrews doing here?" Achish answered, "This is David, an official of King Saul of Israel. He has been with me for quite some time now. He has done nothing I can find fault with since the day he came over to me." But the Philistine commanders were angry with Achish and said to him, "Send that fellow back to the town you gave him. Don't let him go into battle with us. He might turn against us during the fighting. What better way is there for him to win back his master's favor than by the death of our men? After all, this is David, the one about whom the women sang as they danced. Saul has killed thousands, but David has killed tens of thousands." Achish called David and said to him, "I swear by the living God of Israel that you have been loyal to me, and I would be pleased to have you go with me and fight in this battle. I have not found any fault in you from the day you came over to me. But the other kings don't approve of you. So go back home in peace and don't do anything that would displease them." David answered, "What have I done wrong, sir? If, as you say, you haven't found any fault in me since the day I started serving you, why shouldn't I go with you, my master and king, and fight your enemies?" "I agree," Achish replied. "I consider you as loyal as an angel of God. But the other kings have said that you can't go with us into battle. So then, David, tomorrow morning, all of you who left Saul and came over to me will have to get up early and leave as soon as it's light." So David and his men started out early the following morning to go back to Philistia, and the Philistines went on to Jezreel. The word of the Lord. A reading from 1 Samuel chapter 30. 2 days later, David and his men arrived back at Ziklag. The Amalekites had raided southern Judah and attacked Ziklag. They had burned down the town and captured all the women. They had not killed anyone, but had taken everyone with them when they left. When David and his men arrived, they found that the town had been burned down and that their wives, sons, and daughters had been carried away. David and his men started crying and did not stop until they were completely exhausted. Even David's 2 wives, Ahinoam and Abigail, had been taken away. David was now in great trouble because his men were all very bitter about losing their children, and they were threatening to stone him. But the Lord, his God, gave him courage. David said to the priest Abiathar, son of Ahimelech, "Bring me the ephod." And Abiathar brought it to him. David asked the Lord, "Shall I go after those raiders? And will I catch them?" He answered, "Go after them. You will catch them and rescue the captives." So David and his 600 men started out, and when they arrived at Besor Brook, some of them stayed there. David continued on his way with 400 men. The other 200 men were too tired to cross the brook and so stayed behind. the men with David found a young Egyptian out in the country and brought him to David. They gave him some food and water, some dried figs and 2 bunches of raisins. After he had eaten, his strength returned. He had not had anything to eat or drink for 3 full days. David asked him, "Who is your master and where are you from?" "I am an Egyptian, the slave of an Amalekite," he answered. "My master left me behind 3 days ago because I got sick. We had raided the territory of the Kerethites in the southern part of Judah and the territory of the clan of Caleb, and we burned down Ziklag." "Will you lead me to those raiders?" David asked him. He answered, "I will, if you promise me in God's name that you will not kill me or hand me over to my master." And he led David to them. The raiders were scattered all over the place, eating, drinking, and celebrating because of the enormous amount of loot they had captured from Philistia and Judah. At dawn the next day, David attacked them and fought until evening. Except for 400 young men who mounted camels and got away, none of them escaped. David rescued everyone and everything the Amalekites had taken, including his 2 wives. Nothing at all was missing. David got back all his men's sons and daughters and all the loot the Amalekites had taken. He also recovered all the flocks and herds. His men drove all the livestock in front of them and said, "This belongs to David." Then David went back to the 200 men who had been too weak to go with him and had stayed behind at Besor Brook. They came forward to meet David and his men, and David went up to them and greeted them warmly. But some mean and worthless men who had gone with David said, "They didn't go with us, and so we won't give them any of the loot. They can take their wives and children and go away." But David answered, "My brothers, you can't do this with what the Lord has given us. He kept us safe and gave us victory over the raiders. No one can agree with what you say. All must share alike. Whoever stays behind with the supplies gets the same share as the one who goes into battle." David made this a rule, and it has been followed in Israel ever since. When David returned to Ziklag, he sent part of the loot to his friends, the leaders of Judah, with the message, "Here is a present for you from the loot we took from the Lord's enemies." He sent it to the people in Bethel, to the people in Ramah, in the southern part of Judah, and to the people in the towns of Jatir, Aroer, Siphmoth, Eshtemoa, and Rachal, to the clan of Jerahmeel, to the Kenites, and to the people in the towns of Hormah, Borashan, Atak, and Hebron. He sent it to all the places where he and his men had roamed. The word of the Lord.